Everyone, welcome back to the Title IX Insider. And today we're going to be jumping straight in with Nandini, who will be talking about some of the most recent pop culture issues taking place with sexual violence.
Thank you, Dr. Sandy. So, today we are diving into the perfect victim complex, very often seen in pop culture and pop culture news. And it's a phenomena that mostly arises in like gender-based violence cases. And it's widely been discussed in cases like Amber Heard, Megan Thee Stallion, and most recently, almost everywhere in news, Blake Lively. So, for context, Blake Lively starred in It Ends With Us, which is a movie about domestic violence. And she was co starred with Justin Baldoni. And while his press tour aligned with the film's message and was widely praised and received with a lot of love, her approach to the press tour was heavily criticized because it was considered at being odds with the movie's theme and message, because she was found to like be promoting her hair care line and talking about florals and just everything but domestic violence as the main message. And then allegations started surfacing. So she accused Baldoni of sexual harassment, fostering a hostile work environment, and orchestrating coordinated online attacks against her and her reputation after she claims that she made complaints and raised concerns on set. Almost overnight, interestingly, though, the internet split into two teams. So one was Team Blake and then one was Team Justin. But overwhelmingly, it was almost like a knee jerk reaction that the support was towards him and not her. And I think in part that talks about the larger problem of the perfect victim complex. While there were a lot of elements at play, I believe that primarily society has these really unrealistic standards for who a victim should be in order to be believed, in order to be considered credible. And a victim must be blameless. They must have no past mistakes, no contradictions, no actions that are seen as self serving, opportunistic in nature. And the accused must also be someone that the public wants to see as an abuser, especially in like pop culture scenarios. And I think this also ignores people's reaction to stressful and unsafe situations, which is fight, flight, freeze. And survivors often act in ways that prioritize their survival more than anything else, even if in light of like public attention those actions may seem contradictory to their actual claims. And I think we also saw this with Amber Heard, where her past, her emotions, even the tone of her voice was being scrutinized as evidence on not believing her and doubting her abusive claim, her claim that she was being abused. And the same thing is now happening with Lively as well. And the narrative, I think, is harmful to all women who are survivors and victims, but especially, I think, also women of color. Again, in pop culture, this happened when Megan Thee Stallion experienced a lot of backlash when she was talking about about her experience and being shot by the rapper Tory Lanez. Despite his conviction and being found guilty, she was vilified online and she was accused of being a liar. And she herself wrote in an essay, I think in Elle magazine, where she felt that she didn't fit the victim narrative because primarily like because of racial and gender stereotypes, black women are expected to be resilient and strong. And this, I think, just goes to show maybe that the standard of a perfect victim almost silences survivors or reinforces rape culture. But that's like from the public, that's from the internet. So, what do you think, Dr. Sandy? Like, do these biases shape public perception and influence as much? And how do these dynamics impact the Title IX space?
Okay, thank you. And interesting questions, interesting storylines. Um, I think in regards to victim blaming, obviously it's never okay. And in situations where you have had past characteristics, past kind of hostile environments, or the accusation that maybe it was the female that was doing the hostile environments, those kinds of allegations and those kinds of things basically counter the claim when they come forward to say that they've been sexually harassed or some sort of sexual misconduct took place. And so it is troubling to think about when a victim comes forward and then everyone turns on them because they're not the perfect victim. Research has gone to show that a perfect victim is someone that's crying, that's been very submissive, that has been very quiet, that is emotional, that is someone that, wore the right clothing. Um, and the individuals that are then vilified, as you mentioned, are typically those, unfortunately, and always never true, that may have been wearing some slutty clothing or not submissive, but actually aggressive and hostile in their environments, and are seen as more of the bully in environments. And so I can recognize and see that sometimes there are cases where a victim may be blamed for what took place and or not believed because they're not that perfect victim. Now, when we think about the public and the public opinion, I think tabloids and the media might be sharing information that may be half true. And we need to look at the evidence, And so when we start to look at Title IX and the processes and looking at the Blake Lively situation, for example, there are many parallels that I see here when I'm doing an expert analysis on a Title IX case, and with what is happening right now with the Blake Lively case. And so, for example, what I'll say is I did review some of the court documentation and exhibits and evidence that have been coming forward. And so, one in particular, Exhibit A, is 168 pages. And I did go through and I read most of it. Um, and what I discovered is that just like a Title IX case, I would go through, I would look at all the evidence, I would look at all the exhibits, I would look at all the emails, phone calls, information, communication between the complainant and the respondent and everyone else that was involved, everyone else that was around, in order to truly see what kind of dynamics were in play, what kind of relationships existed, what kind of interactions actually happened, in order to then kind of decipher if someone has a strong case or if perhaps maybe there might be a false allegation. Because we have to remember that although obviously if someone is assaulted or sexually harassed, we always want to believe them, we always want to support them and remind them they're not alone. We need to remember that between 2 and 10% of the time, the allegations are false. And when this happens, it's very important for the respondent, the person that's been accused, to provide as much evidence, especially with the communication part, to show that there is portions to discredit the individual making the allegations. Now, I say this as a neutral party. I say this as an expert because the reality is we would not want someone to be charged with, let's say, sexual harassment or sexual assault when they did not really do it and something has been exaggerated for some sort of benefit. On the same token, on the other side of that coin, is we do not want someone that's actually been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted in any which way to feel alone or to feel that they need to be blamed for something that happened to them. So I'm just here to say that in this specific case, in looking at all the information I've seen thus far, because obviously not everything has been released yet, the information in Exhibit A is very interesting. And I would bet it's going to be one of the key portions that the judge, the jury, if it gets there, that the insurance companies, that the attorneys are really going to focus on. Because there is a lot of text messages, there is a lot of emails, there are a lot of documents, letters, there are videos, There is a lot of information there that shows not just the timestamp between the time that the complaint was filed to now. It actually shows everything that happened even before production took place. And it shows how there was a hostility and there was manipulative tendencies already starting to come out, and not necessarily from the respondent. It was from the complainant, Blake Lively. So there is going to be a lot of questions about her motives and things that she said and did. And I can see why a lot of the media is turning on her, especially when individuals are looking at the evidence. The evidence is truly going to be what determines a lot in this case, as it always does in any case. And so it's going to really depend on what Blake Lively presents as far as to support her and why she may have been hostile, why she may have been a little manipulative, because at the end of the day, yes, there is an allegation of quasi sexual harassment, but there seems to have been additional motives behind it. And that is from my assessment and seeing some of the first 100 pages.
Thank you, Dr. Sandy. I think like you said that like information we get from the media is always like half baked, and it's just generally surrounding topics of gender-based violence, sexual violence. The perceptions made are very fast on either ends. And I mean, I think irrespective of what happens, vilifying people, either sides, who come out to like speak up against what has happened, despite being like celebrities or like pop culture icons, I think that in itself is a very problematic notion. Just making perceptions and then vilifying people, irrespective of what the final result is. I don't think this will be the first or the last time this would happen to a celebrity who speaks out against what has happened to them on set. And I think it's just sad that if ordinary people like you and me are held to like a standard of being perfect, if we are like complaining about something or if we're speaking up about something, I think it's just sad that celebrities are treated in isolation and instantly they are attacked. All celebrities, even people who may be the respondent and not necessarily the complaint, they are also instantly attacked, and no one takes the time like you have done to really review the evidence and kind of make an informed decision or an informed opinion. And that, I think in itself, and I may be wrong, but that I think in itself kind of also pushes forth the narrative of like the existing rape culture, the existing desensitization around these topics, I would say. Maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think it's important for individuals to actually look at the evidence. This is why there is a court system. This is why there is a Title IX process on campuses. And if that doesn't work out, then you go to the court system and do a lawsuit, in order to get to the truth, to get to the facts, to actually get a finding that is based on truth and that will either help, the complainant or help support the respondent in the fact that there might be a false allegation. In this situation, I'm not sure exactly, where this is going to land, because as I mentioned, I saw 160 pages worth of exhibit information in court. And as we see, this argument is kind of taking place in the tabloids and the media, which is not the best approach because of the fact that individuals are seeing half truths. They're not seeing all the evidence. And for example, when I see a Title IX case, I'm looking at thousands of pages, sometimes 20,000, 30,000 pages of information, of data, of communication, emails, phone calls. I'm looking at records, mental health records, therapy records, hospital records. I'm looking at a lot of information. You cannot see the truth about a situation with only a small amount of documentation. And so some people are truly basing their opinions just because they are all about women's rights. Some people are basing their opinions based on the fact that women lie. So it's very extreme. I think I would caution individuals from taking sides. I know that is utopian. That probably won't happen. People will take sides. However, from an expert point of view, I definitely see there is a problem where there is an exaggerated amount of weight being given to one side and or the other, and the evidence so far did show me that there's a lot of questions I would have for the complainant far more than the respondent in this situation. And as a reminder to those that may not know, a recent court decision was made where the judge stated that there needs to be a gag order for both sides because of the fact that this is being played out in the media. And if this is really going to go to court for the truth to truly be debated and examined, you can't be swaying the public who are going to be the jury and then expect to have a fair outcome. And so there is a lot of troubling aspects to this case taking place in the public. But again, having seen just some of the information that I feel will be really very critical to the entire analysis of the case, I do see that there's a lot more questions that need to be asked of the complainant here.
I think we're a long way away, like you said, it's very utopian. We're a long way away from having a as a public, having a neutral stance on these kind of matters. And I personally believe that at least when it's happening in like a celebrity space, I think these kind of scenarios should be kept under the wraps till we are all the way to the actual decision. Because, like you said, if the media outlets are swaying the public who's going to end up becoming the jury, how do we know for sure that it's going to be a fair outcome for either of the parties? And I agree with you. I think we're a long way away and there are a lot of troubling aspects, but I think conversations like these, where you bring more attention on looking at that while there are a lot of harmful narratives that may be existing out there, if we all just take a second to, not necessarily even being experts, but if we all just take a second to review some evidence, some actual verified piece of information and not straight from the tabloid, I think we could be closer to having a more neutral opinion.
At the end of the day, that is what truly matters is the fact that opinions will be based off of fact.
Thank you for joining us and thank you for being a part of such an important conversation. I think when more and more people get involved in these conversations and start talking about these things, bringing those opinions out there, we at least can hope for some kind of change on some level. So thank you for being a part of the conversation and thank you for taking out the time to actually review some of the evidence and have a very informed take on what's going on instead of just media opinions.
Thank you, Nandini.